Have you seen Willy's Wonderland?
No.
So that is essentially Five Nights at Freddy's, the movie, starring Nic Cage.
Oh, we've come full circle. Hey everybody, welcome back to another episode of Speech Check. I am Sam.
And I'm Matt.
And this is episode 28.
And today, we're going to talk about Lego 2K Drive, Nic Cage coming to Dead by Daylight, and fourth wall breaking in humour. Is it good or is it annoying?
But, before we talk about any of that, Matt, what have you been playing?
So, after last week's episode where I did the review of Redfall, I thought, you know what? I might as well download it, right? It's on Game Pass. It's basically free. I can try it, right? I can just see if it is as bad as everyone says it is.
That shouldn't be the hook for a game, though, right? It shouldn't be, is this as terrible as everyone's confirmed that it is?
Sadly, that's all there was for Redfall for me. And the answer is yes. I did a short just to try and show, I don't know, just to show my first hour or so of gameplay, just little bits that I thought would be fun. And I thought, it could be good, could be bad, it could be either way. I don't know. Maybe it is hyped up as being bad. It took me 45 minutes just to get to gameplay, partially because of the bloody Bethesda account. I booted it up. Well, I'll tell you what, it was a journey. The whole thing was a journey. Let me paint you a picture. So I download the game. It's 90 gigs. That takes a solid 2 hours. I get it. I boot it up, and the opening screen is like a fully 3D rendered section of Redfall, like the town, the map, and I couldn't move my mouse across the screen because the frame rate was so bad. It was just tanking my computer completely. I couldn't do anything. I had to use the arrow keys to navigate around. And what is the first thing that they ask you to do? There's not an options menu. There's nothing like that. Just to press enter to play, right? And what is the first thing they ask you to do? Enter all your details for a Bethesda account. And I physically couldn't do that because the performance was so bad. So I had to shut down the game, go to my Bethesda account, link it to my Xbox Game Pass separately, and then go back in and just hope it picked it up. And it did.
Yeah.
So, I got through that. The first point where they allow you to go into the options menu is the character select screen, right? And that was where I found, when I finally got to the video settings, which was fucking painful, that they'd started the game. The game boots up natively, its default option settings. It was fucking 4K max settings. I can't handle that. I've got a 1070 or something. I'm not running a really... My rig's decent enough. I could play Resi 4. In what is it, medium, and I had no frame rate issues whatsoever. So I don't know why they chose that to be the default. I don't know why you couldn't access the options menu before that point. And yeah, at least that made it run when I put it down to 1080p. I put it on medium. The game, actually, in fairness, the game looked kind of okay at first, because they've got stylized characters and stuff.
Yeah.
So it didn't look too bad. I was like, all right. And then slowly, it just started to reveal itself. The jank was just happening. Everyone knows the AI is bad, and it's terrible. But I think worse than that, you can get past all of that, some jank, Bethesda jank on, I don't know, Skyrim or Fallout 4 or Fallout 3 or Fallout New Vegas or any of those. You can get past it and actually enjoy the gameplay if there's gameplay there. But it was just anemic. It was so nothing. I didn't feel like I had any direction. There was no fun in any of the characters. The setting was okay, but just kind of dead. Pun may be intended. Yeah, it was just deeply disappointing.
I think that's been the issue, right? Is that if it was fun, you would have people that would soldier on and get through it, like in other Bethesda games, in every game they've ever released. That you think, well, there's a really good game beneath all this myriad of annoying bugs that range from slightly a pain in the ass to your game crashing and losing the last 2 hours of progress.
Yeah.
But that does not exist in Redfall, right? That's the issue, is that, well, I'm playing this terrible game for why?
Yeah, you there's no light at the end of the tunnel. It's not there. There is no fun game to be had there. And I actually retract my statement from last week where I said, give it a year, and I reckon it'll be a solid 6 out of 10. I don't think that's coming.
Give it a year and I think it'll be dead.
Yeah, they're oh yeah, always online as well. That was annoying. I think they just need to cut their losses. I mean, all they could do is have a really good DLC that took place on like a completely different map or something. That's all I could think. Is it kind of like the Prey DLC Moonfall? It was like its own kind of like hived off experience that was really great in its own right. Like if they did something like that, then that thing could be good. But I don't think there's anything they could inject into the game to make it better, short of like changing all of its systems. So yeah, Redfall is exactly as bad as everyone says it is. Next up was World of Horror, which I played a little bit because they released another DLC not too long ago, and I thought I'd pick it back up and play it. Just a fun game. Like I like to dip into it every now and then, do a couple runs. Nothing really new to say there. Then my third game is Ravenlok, which I'm going to be covering later on, so I won't say too much here. I did complete it, played through the whole thing, and it was a fun time. And its the feature that I like the most in Ravenlok is that it had an options menu at the start of the fucking game, so I could optimize things before I try to run it, which is, you'd think would just be standard. I'm not salty about Redfall's shittiness, Just give me a main menu. Give me a basic starter screen. Also, doubly, right? The intro cinematic is an animatic, essentially, and then they do a really short in-game, like, cutscene, quote-unquote, after that. And then every cutscene is, like, a still frame. But their main menu is this insanely demanding, fully rendered thing. It's like, just why? What's the logic? I don't understand. I'm gonna stop. Sam, what have you been playing?
I've been playing slightly better things than that, as in like functionally. Redfall, not shitting on the other games. I finished some stuff on Hogwarts Legacy. Danielle had characterized that game now. She's like, I've done everything that I can do on this game that I consider fun, and I was like mopping up achievement stuff, which is going around the world and collecting stuff. It does a pretty good job of like tracking collectibles and all the things you need.
Yeah.
But this one vein of collectibles, you have to follow butterflies to hidden treasure.
Oh.
Which isn't terribly hard, and there was only like 15 of them, but I had to go through those manually. And it's one of the things where I needed to complete. It was like aesthetic stuff. There's a room that you can customize basically.
Does it have any gameplay function? The room?
You can raise beasts, and then beasts are like an infinite resource of stuff that allows you to make potions and things like that. So like the rarity of beasts have higher like cooldowns, but they'll give you like hippogriff feathers, and that's used to make like powerful potions and stuff like that.
That's cool.
It does have a function, but then there's just things that are aesthetic, different choices that don't really do anything. You can get like super into that like Minecraft level stuff. Well, probably not Minecraft, not that deep. Like Fallout 4 settlement type stuff. So I had to go through and find them, but it was like, you're missing 3 out of 150, and they appear randomly. It's not like, go here, it will be here. It's like, there are cosmetic chests within the world, and they will just give you something random. So it was like, I don't know where these 3 chests are.
Oh,
like, they
God.
could literally be anywhere. And it got to a point where I got to one left, and I was like, if I go here and it's not here, I'm going to cry.
On a scale of the feathers in Assassin's Creed to like the Riddler trophies in terms of decent collectibles, where do the collectibles for Hogwarts Legacy like sit? Are they boring chump work, or are they actually like decent?
I would say at least half of them are relevant up to a point, and you're quite capable of character anyway. So if you want to, you can go like all in on them, but you don't necessarily have to, which I think is a good way to do collectibles, and they do tracking of them well. That's all I want in a game. If you're putting loads of stuff in your game, allow me to track it and like break it down and show me where stuff is. And some games get that right, like Alan Wake. There's a ton of collectibles in Alan Wake, and they tell you how many you have in total, but they don't tell you where you have them.
Yeah, just seeing that you've got like 300 out of 500 of this thing. You're like, well, I don't know what chapter that is, where the map. Like, at least do it by gameplay section.
You've put this in there. You know where it is. If you could tell me where it is, because you want me to collect it, right? You put that in there for a reason. So help me out here.
Just give me a hint.
We just don't know what this stuff is. What's this doing in our game? And there is an annoying, the last three, well, no, two, because I did one today. Achievements is to basically get to a certain point of the story, but you have to do it as in each house. So Gryffindor, Ravenclaw, Hufflepuff, and Slytherin.
Oh, okay.
But I don't know why it wasn't just to get to this, like, because every other story-based achievement is just, you reach this point in the story, here's your little reward. But for that, they specifically do it as you need to do this as every house. You just need to start the game and do like the first 3 hours as each house. So that's tedious.
Yeah.
But you can skip through the cutscenes and stuff. It's not like you've got to sit through all the dialogue in that. So not as excruciating as it could be. But I did one today, and it took me about 2 hours or so.
Okay, that's not too bad.
So not terrible. Another one I played was Star Wars Episode 1 Racer, a game from like 1999, which was on Games with Gold, so it was free.
Okay.
And it turns out I only remembered the first course, because I think that's the only one I ever played. I was like, oh, this is the course from the film, and I want to play this over and over again. It's ugly as sin. Like, it's very much just a poor. They've smoothed it out, but it's...
Oh, it's bad when they do that. When they do the smoothing after the fact, it looks horrendous.
Yeah, it's just, if anything, it's just, oh, you could kind of get away with it on an N64 because everything was grainy, but now they're like, oh, so now you can see how really bad it is and how blocky, and you can actually count the polygons.
When I've played, I think I was playing the Sega Genesis pack that they've got for Steam, and they've got like a bunch of like the classic games in there, and they have an option for, what do they call it? Not pixel interlacing, but they essentially anti-alias a pixel art game, and everything just looks like a smear of mud, and it's like, no, just give me the definition. I don't mind about the blocky look. It like the artists of that time made these sprites or models with that in mind, so that they were legible to the player. So I trust the artists that made the game in the first instance, rather than this aftermarket anti-aliasing.
Yeah, John, I was chatting with someone about this the other day, about how TV and like monitor fidelity is like unblurring blur, which you would never be able to see anyway. Like if I wave my hand in front of my face, I physically can't see every frame, but if you watch that back, you could decode every frame. So I was like, we don't need this much fidelity. Like I physically can't see it. So
yeah.
But it was a better game than I remembered. It's like an arcade racer. It's not like Mario Kart, doesn't have any pickups. It's just kind of pure learn the course, race good. But it's got like an upgrade system. You can upgrade your pod racer on it. I was a purist. I was Anakin for every race.
Nice.
And he, I think, starts off objectively the worst, and you have to like upgrade him. But you can. Interestingly, it doesn't translate this very well. There were like 3 menus of being able to buy parts. It was like inspect your vehicle, which I thought was, I could see what was on my vehicle, but it just essentially presents you with a menu where you walk up to your like vehicle in a bay, and then if you press anything, it just presents you with the same menu you were looking at.
Nice.
So odd. Then there's buy parts, which then pulls you out and takes you to like an upgrade screen.
Mm-hmm.
And there was junkyard, where you could just, random parts would appear and they could be slightly cheaper, but there was no reason as to why. Yeah, it wasn't helping you out a lot on the UI stuff. So that was slightly confusing. And then I realized after reading stuff online that if you like crash in a race, if you crash so many times, you'll just like break apart and then you'll lose it. But it never tells you that.
Oh.
So there's not an indication that it's like, oh, you've just lost your turbo engine, so you should go back and buy another one or repair it. It's just like, unless you just happen to look at your vehicle stats, it's like, oh, that's gone down, and it's not apparent as to why.
It's weird.
So they had some ideas, but they were being like, considering that probably would have been for kids as well. Kids would have watched that and gone, oh, that was Anakin, that was cool. That was a cool part of the movie. I want to do that. So to put all these systems in and then explain nothing.
Yeah, just assume you'll get it. Yeah. Your intimate knowledge of pod racing will see you through.
Yeah, this thing they've just invented in this film.
And never comes back again.
No, only features in that one episode, as everything is in episode 1. Don't get me started on midichlorians.
Oh, but mate, that's how the Force moves around.
That could be an entire episode.
Yeah, I'm gonna crack something open there.
But yeah, I mean, it was Games Gold. It was free. I've completed it now, and it was good. The only thing gripe I had with it as well, because you're driving at pace, the courses are actually designed fairly well, but because of the weirdness of the graphics and the speed you were able to play at, you couldn't tell almost sometimes where to go. So it was like you just be flying, you just hit a wall and be like, oh, I was meant to turn right there.
Oh,
And
okay.
I just had to know that. Or it's quite hard to differentiate on like the desert courses sometimes,
Mm.
or the city. There's some city courses where there's a lot of set dressing, and it's like, oh, that thing wasn't. It messes with your depth perception a bit.
It sounds like it's got the film tie-in curse of just not having that final level of polish, like some UX stuff, not really having good map boundaries, but being good enough.
Yeah, I imagine it was rushed to get out in time with the film.
Hmm.
But if you keep that in mind, it's actually not that bad. Whether they've done any, I think it's Aspire, are the devs that did it. I don't think they did it originally. If they have upscaled that and made it better, I can't say because I remember basically one thing about the original. But it's better than I thought it was going to be, and I've completed it now for me, so I don't need to go back to it.
It's done. Bury it.
Yeah, it's dead to me. And my final game is Beyond Good and Evil, another port. I had this. I don't know if you have this as well. It's games where from an achievement perspective, I see that and I see like nobody has completed it, and I'm like, why? It doesn't seem that hard. I mean, it's an old school Xbox Live Arcade game, so it was back when it had to be 12 achievements, 200 game score. That's all it could be. And I just think they don't sound that hard. For the majority of it, you just kind of play the game. And I don't know what it is, but I was finding it really difficult to like it. And it's one of those games that's kind of like a cult classic, right?
Yeah.
When people are like, oh, I love that game. And it was meant to be like a huge franchise. And it was back when Ubisoft were a bit more experimental and made, entertaining, and they didn't just make Assassin's Creed and Tom Clancy games.
Yeah.
I actually gave it I feel like maybe when I played it, I was like, I'm just playing this to complete it and I'm not really invested in it in any way. And so I'd be like watching a YouTube video or something, or have it doing something. And then I sat down last night. I was like, I haven't really got anything to play. So I'll whack this on and carry on in the story. Because I'd only got about like a couple of hours in. I was thinking, right, I'll play this and I'll actually dedicate my attention to it and see if it actually is good and I was just being ignorant. And it's getting better. Like, the combat's a little bit weak and it's not kind of about that. It's about a lot of taking pictures, which is unusual, but kind of cool.
It completely passed by me, Beyond Good and Evil. Like, I heard it was good. I know people that think it was very good. But there's something about it that like, it just never drew me in.
Yeah, it feels dated in a strange way, which I didn't think you could say about a game. It feels very early PS2 era. And I don't know if it was based in that time, but that's what it feels like.
I remember it being on GameCube.
Yeah, like that kind of era, like early mid 2000s.
Yeah.
Maybe they saw like Shadow of the Colossus did really well, and they tried to make out of anything of that because it is quite strange. Like the voice acting's a bit weird. There's like alien races in it, so it's a bit Star Warsy. It's a very odd game, but it's not bad, and it gets better. Maybe it's a bit of a slow start, and I'm actually getting into the good stuff of it now. But it's growing on me, as unusual as it is. But there's enough intrigue for me to stick with it.
You have to give me your final thoughts on that, because like I said, I've always been on the fence as to whether or not to play it. Like Psychonauts was another one that went by me for ages because I was like, nah, that just looks too fucking weird for me. But then when I did play it, I was like, oh, actually, it's quite a good platformer when you get down to it. So yeah, if you rate Beyond Good and Evil, let me know and I might pick it up.
I shall give you my full verdict when I'm done with it. But that's enough of me talking far too much about Beyond Good and Evil. Matt, what's come out?
What has come out? What a great question that I am going to answer. So, first game I'm going to talk about is the one that I teased during what I was playing, Ravenlok. That came from Coco Cucumber, is the dev. Release of 4th of May. Metacritic review score is 69 with a 7.9 user score. And I've completed this. It's quite a short game. It was only, I think I spent 5 hours playing it. And it's an action-adventure game kind of in the vein of Medieval, if you remember that PS1 classic.
I do. Good game.
So it has combat sort of like that, and then you have some puzzles in the game, and then some light exploration. You play as a girl whose family has inherited a house out in the countryside, I assume in the US, and they find that there's like a portal to essentially Wonderland. It's like super heavily inspired by Alice in Wonderland, down to even having like the Queen of Hearts and Tweedledum and Tweedledee and stuff in it. And my experience was it was pretty good. I almost thought it was losing me at some points, but it did like just enough to keep me in that flow state, like just barely enough. The exploration was all right, and the in like my notes I said it's a 2.5D kind of game. It's fully 3D, but you have like locked off areas to explore that are kind of side scrolly with some depth to them. So it isn't like you get a full map. You almost get like a level that's presented to you from like a slightly isometric view. Then you run around and do stuff. The
Just
levels.
before you get too much in,
Go on.
when you say it was losing you because it wasn't engaging enough, because the art style, because it was too repetitive, why were you waning?
So art style, great. They use voxels for the characters and it looks really good, and everything else is just nice. It's just like really good presentation, both visually and auditory. It's got good music. I think it was the gameplay loop that was like on the verge of losing me, because it's got this combat that has dashing, which is essentially a dodge, an attack button, and then a block button. But I very quickly realized that I don't need the block button and I can basically just stun lock things. So I just kind of dash around hitting as much as possible. So it wasn't really that rewarding, but then sometimes you have to time your dodges a little bit. It was just the combat was, you could tell that they tried to put this layer of mechanical expertise in it, but you could really quickly get to the bottom of how to win every combat encounter, and it wasn't that hard. The whole game is easy. And it has like, it's got stats as well. Like the character you're playing has stats, but they all level up automatically when you trade stuff into this mouse. He gives you level ups and everything just goes up automatically and you get stronger in every single way. So it's not really a level up in like a true RPG context. It's just like I am now stronger in every single way, and you just do that a bunch of times. And it almost lost me, but the story was like just good enough. The presentation was just good enough. The way that you move from puzzles to exploration to combat, and the way that you keep shifting between them, it was like just engaging enough, and I did enjoy it. Like I played through the whole thing. I was like, yeah, that was good. Like I probably won't remember it in a year's time, but I was like that. I had fun with that. It was good. They do reuse this really annoying exploration thing where like you get to a new area, right, and you speak to one of the characters. The cast of characters is really cool as well. They're all like, they look good, like I said, with the voxels and stuff. But they're also very unique. Like they've each got little quirks and stuff, just like Wonderlandy. They're all just oddball characters. Yeah. So you go to a new area, you talk to someone, and they're like, "Oh, in order to wake up this witch or like get this dragon out of its ancient slumber, I need you to find 5 of these things in this environment," and then you just have to run around on a little scavenger hunt, find them all, and then you can progress. And that got kind of tiresome. The puzzles were great. I thought the puzzles were some of the best designed elements, personally, because they were tough. Like I had to make notes when I was doing the puzzles, but then when you
Really?
solve them, you're like, oh, cool. You go to one place, you take some notes, or like you write down a sequence, and then you implement it somewhere else. I was like, yeah, it worked for me. I enjoyed it. It's on Game Pass at the minute, so I played it for free. But my final stamp, my final verdict is play it. I reckon. Like if you've got a bit of spare time, it's a fun little romp. That's how I describe it. Rompy. That's what it's like. You just kind of romp through the game, have a laugh with it. It's over. It's quite cute, quite endearing. It's a nice little experience. Can recommend.
I've had a couple of friends who have played it via Game Pass, and they have said pretty much that. Just play it.
It's surface level, but it's just fun. Just a fun old game. Next up is Lego 2K Drive, which I had absolutely no idea about. I don't really keep my ear to the ground with Lego's gaming endeavors. Like I've not heard of many of their games. But this is a kart racer developed by Visual Concept and released on the 16th of May. Metacritic score is 73 and the user score is 7.2 currently. Yeah, they've released an arcade racer which is kind of Mario Kart and a bit Simpsons Hit and Run, kind of. Like it has a very basic overworld structure, so you can cruise around, like find different races and stuff, and take part in them. It's not quite as involved as an overworld as like Burnout Paradise or anything, where you've got like the spontaneous races that pop off and it's very interactive. You do just like go to a big glowing thing and they're like, now you're in a race. Not to say there's anything wrong with that, just that's the structure of the game. During races, you've got your standard kind of karting experience. So you're drifting, jumping, boosting, picking up items, firing them. But you also have 3 different versions of your car. So if you're on the track, you have a car. If you're on the dirt or you're off road, you have like an ATV or a buggy. And if you're in water, you have a little boat. And the thing that's maybe a bit more unique to this karting experience is it. Well, when I was looking it up and stuff, it put me in mind of Banjo-Kazooie Nuts and Bolts, which most people don't like to have in their mind.
No, but for good reason. But if you made that game as not Banjo-Kazooie, people probably wouldn't have hated it. But they were like, when's the next Banjo-Kazooie game coming out after Banjo-Tooie? And then you get given that. That's why people were like, absolutely not. What the hell is this?
See, I respect Banjo-Kazooie. Like I understand what it did for gaming. I understand it was important, but I thought it like went past me. Like I played it a little bit and I was like, oh, okay, that's nice. So when Nuts and Bolts came out, I was like, oh, what's this? I can like build my own car. Like I had no strong ties to the old game, and I had no idea why people hated it so much. I was like, this it's kind of fun. Like you build a car, drive around, do some stuff. It didn't hold me for very long, but it was like a fun game.
Good little segue into our question for later, because that features a lot of meta humor, which is another reason why people did not like it.
So Banjo-Kazooie Nuts and Bolts had a lot of meta humor.
Yeah, in the original 2, it was done in like a slightly more tasteful way, and because I don't want to spoil too much for the question, but it was a good game at its core that snuck a few of those jokes in, and we were like, okay, I'll let you off because you're actually good, and that ties in what we're doing here. But Nuts and Bolts was like, I already hate this, and you were being like, oh, this isn't a platformer. I bet you were expecting a platformer, but instead it's a car, and it's like, yeah, I was. I really was.
Yeah, that just rubbed my fucking face in it. That's really piqued my disappointment. But yeah, back to Lego. They have that system essentially. You can completely build up and customize your 3 vehicles, so your road vehicle, your off-road vehicle, and your water vehicle, and then you can like save it as a loadout, so that car loadout will happen whenever you choose it and go for a race, which seems really cool and it's quite robust from everything I've seen. Another little mechanic they've got in there is that your vehicle can take damage as you race, and I think maybe they've taken some inspiration from the other Lego games. You can drive through the track furniture, and that will give you blocks that like refill your health. So if you start taking damage from weapons and things, your car will like degrade, and then you drive through something and get those blocks back, and it rebuilds. Kind of cool. It's fully co-op as well, aimed more at children, but in and of itself, a fairly fun and competent kart racing experience. 10 to 15 hour game. Here's the fly in the ointment. It's a full price game. Full price, which now means 70 quid. And it has microtransactions in it to give you more in-game currency to unlock more customizable options. But there is no way currently for you to share the vehicles that you create with anyone else. There's no like create a showcase or like share this vehicle with friends or anything. None of that. But you can buy stuff. You can just actively buy currency and things like off the rip with the game, which put a little sour taste in my mouth when I was reading up about this. Don't like that at all. From everything I've seen, my final verdict is seems kind of fun. I personally wouldn't pay full price for it. But if you've got kids and they really like Lego or something or anything of that nature, I can see how it would be worth it, especially as it is fully couch co-op. Like that's quite a big selling point.
Sounds like from what you said, as a man who has played a lot of Lego games, it retains the soul and core of what you would expect, like you said, with the health blocks smashing through the environment. That's a very Lego type thing to be doing. So They haven't just slapped the license on a racing game. It seems
No,
they've thought about it.
it is.
But
It's like built from the ground up to be Lego, and all of the presentation is like Lego-y as well, and the cutscenes have got that Lego humor. They've kind of got their own brand of like slightly self-referential, irreverent humor.
yeah, slightly slapstick. It's a bit of mix, a bit quirky.
Mm. So yeah, do with that information what you will. And my last game. So this is a bit of a curveball, right? But I thought I'd throw it in here because
You can't not mention it.
I gotta say it. You gotta put it in here. Legend of Zelda: Tears of the Kingdom, right? I'm not gonna just add to the pile of people that say that it's great. It's obviously great. It's a 10 out of 10. Breath of the Wild was fantastic, and this just adds to Breath of the Wild. Like, it's great. Of course, it's great. So I thought I'd take the opportunity to pose the question to you, Sam.
Oh, you've engaged me here. I wasn't ready for this.
No, I'm off the rip. Here we go. Is the Switch, the hardware itself, making the games for Switch worse? Think of what Zelda Tears of the Kingdom could have been if it was like an Xbox Microsoft title, and it doesn't have the whole Microsoft like crunch whatever behind it. It's like
Yeah, it could have not worked and come out 3 months earlier.
yeah, it could have been chock full of microtransactions and been always online. And but you get what I mean. Like if you had that power behind it, and you weren't locked to 30 FPS because the Switch can't handle anything higher than that, and you could actually use more advanced techniques for like generating textures and particle effects, which the Switch can't handle. Like think of how good it could look, or how different the experience could be. Like is the Switch doing itself a disservice now? Because it was underpowered when it came out, and now how many years have we passed its release? Like 6?
Quite a few, yeah. And as far as I know, the OLED is just the screen and the battery life, right? It has no better specs.
No, yeah, it's just from everything I know, it's just screen and battery life.
Well, you're asking the wrong person here, I think, because I am a console gamer. Like, I don't use my PC for gaming. Whereas I know to a lot of people, frame rate, graphical fidelity, all that kind of stuff is like paramount. Whereas I will settle quote unquote for less. I will settle for 30 FPS and not as fancy stuff to play an objectively better game. And I know I've seen Call of Duty ray tracing. It does look beautiful. I will not deny that. And seeing what games can look like now. I remember looking at Modern Warfare trailer being like, that looks real. That looks like a live action trailer.
Oh, is that the one where they've got the night vision section?
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, that fucked me up as well. I was like, what is this?
Yeah, I had to check myself on that one. Could it be better? Obviously. I feel like that seems to almost be Nintendo's shtick. They seem to lean into that to be like, yeah, it's not better. But also Nintendo never sell a console at a loss, which is what everybody else does. So, and I think they've come out and said, we're not releasing another, or the Switch successor this year. So they've just flat out been like, nope, not doing that. Because I think that would probably drive the people that were making Metroid Prime 4 insane.
Yeah, I don't know if there is an answer for it, but I just think it's an interesting thing to think about. Like,
it definitely yes, it could be better, but would those things make it a better game overall? I think the yield, no, I don't think it would, and I think people inherently don't. It's weird because I was saying to someone about this in work. Jedi Survivor came out. It was a good game, but it needed patches, needed work.
Mm.
Cyberpunk being the main one that bore the brunt, that was kind of I was going to say the straw that broke the camel's back, but that was more of an anvil. That thoroughly disappointed a lot of people off the back of, you've released The Witcher 3, Game of the Year, and then people were like, oh my god, this is going to be The Witcher, but in the future.
Mm.
That kind of lit the fire, in my opinion, of people being like, we do not trust games anymore. But with Nintendo, you don't have that. There was no reservations, even though I haven't bought it yet, I will buy it eventually. There was no reservations in my mind that this would have technical issues. You know what I mean? That didn't even factor into my thinking because it's Nintendo.
Yeah. I mean, they do have a pretty good track record for not allowing that through. I think we said this last episode as well, excluding Pokemon, which I know had a ton of issues. But yeah, no, I exactly the same. Like, with a Nintendo product, like first party, generally, even if the game itself isn't for you, its quality will be high. It will be polished.
Yeah, like if you didn't want to play a specific game because you weren't into that genre, didn't like that franchise, whatever. Like I'm not a fan of two things that I'll never really touch: RTSs and Final Fantasy. For whatever reason, I am just not into those things. They didn't resonate with me.
Mm.
I can look at Final Fantasy and say that's a good. Here's how a JRPG should be made. They did all those things. They ticked all those boxes, and they did X, Y, Z.
Mm.
And then you can tell you have that. There's a reason they had a seal of quality, right? There's a reason they introduced that way back when. And I know games don't necessarily have that now, but that exists ethereally, right? Because I don't buy anything day one now because I just do not trust it. I'm like, I need to give it 3 months to go back in the oven so they can sort it out because I guarantee it won't be ready.
No, it's a founded concern for sure. And yeah, I thought it would be an interesting thing just to pose. Like, is the trade-off of being able to take your Switch anywhere worth it being significantly less powerful than anything else you can play video games on, barring like truly handheld consoles? But yeah, something to muse upon. I'll leave it on a little cliffhanger for that. And I will go to the Game Pass roundup. So, new to Game Pass this week is Superland 6 Inches Under, Eastern Exorcist, FIFA 23, Fuga 2, Melodies of Steel, Shadowrun Returns, Shadowrun Dragonfall, and Shadowrun Hong Kong. Leaving Game Pass is Evil Genius 2, Europa 4 Universalis, Lawnmower Simulator, that sounds like a hoot, FIFA 21, and Floppy Nights. So if any of those games seem interesting to you, or if you're halfway through them and you need to complete them.
Some quick points to raise. As someone who's mowed their lawn in real life, don't do it in video games. or in real life. To get someone else to do it because it's not a fun activity. And FIFA 23, good thing they're bringing that on Game Pass as they're literally about to lose the license in a few months. And FIFA 21 when they're about to shut down the servers.
There we go. Context. Context is key. That is enough of me talking about releases. I'm going to hand over to Sam, who's going to talk about news. So fill me in, Sam. What's going on?
I've got some obscure ones this week. I'm going to start with the weirdest and hopefully get less weird. So an announcement that nobody was expecting. It was a very, very brief trailer from Dead by Daylight to show that Nic Cage is going to be in the game. I
saw this. It came up on my Instagram. I was like, what? Is he a killer? Do we know anything about it yet?
No, we do not. That's the thing. It's unclear as to what he's going to be yet. I hope he's a killer, to be honest, because that would be Nic Cage in a nutshell. He should be a survivor, but I would prefer him to be a killer just because it'll be even weirder. I think the trailer's only like 50 seconds long. Just shows like a destroyed studio, and then he steps into the light, and he's wearing attire that he wore in the meta film. Is it Unbearable Weight of Massive Talent?
Oh yeah, with Pedro Pascal.
Yeah, the man himself. More details are currently coming on July 5th, where there'll be a proper announcement, and they will actually expand on if there's usually like a new map, a new set of survivors, and a new killer. So whether there'll be more to do that. If they put Pedro in the game, I'd actually start playing Dead by Daylight. But my question to you from this, Matt,
you
hit me with one, I'm hitting you back. Does having celebrities or the concept of star power in a game, in video games, does it work? Does it have that thing? Because people will go see a film, right, if a certain actor's in it, because you like that actor, they're a good actor.
Yeah.
You go see them. Like, for instance, I'm a big fan of Tom Hardy, but if Tom Hardy was in a game, it almost has, for me, the opposite effect. I'm like, they've got attached to this project. They probably just think, I just turn up and say a few lines, when it's like voice acting is not that. It is a craft for sure. Just ask Matt Mercer.
Yeah, it's a weird one because, like you've drawn the comparison of films. It works for films, and it works on me for films. Like I have seen bad films that have good actors in them, and I think it never used to be a thing with games, like at all. And I don't know when it started, but I want to say was it Call of Duty that started it off?
They've done a few, yeah. So Kit Harington was the villain in Infinite Warfare, and Conor McGregor was in it. Weirdly, I think.
I like you said, it doesn't really say anything about the quality of the game because I suppose with a film, your mechanism for experiencing the story is the actor through which the story is portrayed. Whereas in a game, I'm probably going to have nothing to do with that actor or their performance for like 90% of the game. So it doesn't really matter so much. And with you, like in the same vein as yourself, it kind of makes me a little worried as to what the senior management are thinking in terms of like shouldn't the pull of the gameplay and the pull of that be enough to make people want to play it? Why do we need an extra name on top of it? That all being said, it's worked a fucking treat for Fortnite.
Yeah, they've gone mad. Like, there's people that shouldn't be in Fortnite. There's football, soccer players in Fortnite, and what?
Yeah,
It's literally just, oh, you like this thing? Here's this. And they have done events around it, so they have put more effort into it. Like when the World Cup was on, they had people in it, so there was more of a reason. They weren't just like throwing anything at it and be like, you like this thing, you like this thing.
So what does it have to do with the gameplay? Like in any way? I know there's rappers in it as well, right? Like
it's just skins, and I think because I heard off the back of this as well, it was a basketball player. I can't remember what his name is. Is going to be in Modern Warfare 2 as an operator skin, and I think even don't mind it too much with streamers because they have that natural connection to the game. So like Doctor Disrespect, is it Road Company he was in?
oh yeah, yeah, yeah.
And that's cool because he's like he plays the game and people are like, yeah, we want to do that. And so having that connection is alright. And maybe having people as like DLC stuff is okay because like Run the Jewels, who I don't know if you know, they're a rap group. They were just randomly in Gears of War 4 as like skins that you could buy. And Snoop Dogg being the announcer in COD 4. So that COD 4, Call of Duty Ghosts. So there are, I think, ways you can go about it. Like that was this is just weird. It was like pay £2 and let Snoop Dogg be your announcer.
I mean that's sick. Like I would do that. That make in a way that makes more sense to me than having them appear in the game. If you've got an announcer and you're gonna have someone famous do the announcing, that is more than having them show up in a cutscene once every like 3 hours or something. Like it makes more sense.
And I don't know if I'd prefer to have them as themselves because I think again in Ghosts, weirdly, Brandon Ruth was your brother in the game, and he gave like a good performance. He was like acting, but then it wasn't. They didn't make a big deal of that, which I thought was strange.
Yeah, that is an odd one. But for me, it does not give me any kind of pull to the game at all, unless it's Brendan Fraser, and then it doesn't matter. I'll buy it if Brendan Fraser's in it.
We must all protect Brendan Fraser.
We must.
My second one, slightly less weird. Five Nights at Freddy's released a trailer for its film, a 50-second trailer on Friday, the 18th of May. It's being made by Universal Pictures and it's starring Josh even Hutcherson, who is Peter from Hunger Games, if you don't know that name. He was also he's been in some weird, he was in The Kid in Zathura, if you've seen Zathura, like the spiritual successor to Jumanji.
Oh, yeah.
And then he was in like Journey to the Center of the Earth. He was in all kinds of films like that all in a really similar vein. He was typecast as a 13-year-old who goes to distant planets.
Adventure kid.
Yes, very much so. And Matthew Lillard is in it, as in live action Shaggy / Scream.
He's either great or terrible. There's no in between.
When he signs on, he's like, "Look, I'm either going to be fantastic. I'm going to fuck this up for everyone."
It's a little bit Nic Cagey. It's
yeah. I'm going to make masterpieces or 0.1 out of 10s. From what we can gather, or what I can gather from the trailer, is that essentially he's going to follow the story of the first game, where Hutchinson plays a security guard in Fazbear's. I don't know if what's the name of the restaurant? Is it Freddy Fazbear's or is it Fazbear's Pizza? Whatever.
You're asking the wrong man. I have no idea.
You don't know FNAF lore? Get off this podcast.
Sorry, mate.
It's Chuck E. Cheese, right? It's
yeah, basically, yeah.
Legally distinct Chuck E. Cheese. It's inspired by that. And there's not too. They don't give too much away, but it's just. I assume it's going to be in the vein of it's going to be like a dark comedy has that horror element to it, but I don't know how it's going to translate too well to film because from what I know, the dread of Five Nights at Freddy's is the silence, almost the fact that nothing's happening and then something happens. So how they're going to make an engaging film out of that, I don't know. But I will not judge on 50 seconds worth of footage.
Yeah.
My question that again for you.
Oh, go on. Sorry.
Now that we've had the Super Mario Brothers movie and its immense success, as we mentioned on the last episode, if you haven't heard that, go back and listen to episode 27. Is this going to be the birth of the video game movie cash-in? Is everybody now going to be like, use our game, make a film out of our video game franchise? Are we going to have the video game cinematic universe because everybody wants to be Marvel?
Yes, because the movie industry is soulless, and if they have stats showing that something worked, they're just going to try it again.
They want proof of concept, right? You can't come with an original IP because they're like, show us that this already makes money.
I reckon it will explode with a ton of crap films. Do you know what it'll be like? It'll be like the early 2000s superhero boom. You know, Spider-Man did all right, and then we just got like Elektra and Daredevil and like other crud. Although I actually quite like Daredevil, even though I shouldn't.
But you don't like it because it's good, right? You like it because of...
I like it because of Colin Farrell's portrayal of...
He had fun with that role, Bullseye.
Bullseye, that's it, yeah. God, it was so dumb, but I loved it.
He enjoyed himself, definitely.
I want to loop back a bit as well to FNAF movie, right? Have you seen Willy's Wonderland?
No.
So that is essentially Five Nights at Freddy's, the movie, starring Nic Cage.
Oh, we've come full circle.
Yeah. You've tied these two together beautifully with a film you've never seen.
It's like it wasn't intentional. But yeah, no, I'd be inclined to agree that everybody now is going to be like going to studios and saying, "Hey, make FIFA Ultimate Team the movie," where someone just opens packs for an hour.
Oh my god! Can you imagine a FIFA film?
I've watched films about football, or watched them when I was like 13. Shout out to anyone who's seen the movie Goal, and it somehow got a sequel. I don't think it got a trilogy. It shouldn't have got a trilogy if it did.
I have no idea.
And they're harmless. They're like a 5 to 6 out of 10 film, but it's like you watch it. We watched it because we were like, we play football every day, so let's go watch a film about football. But you know, why should that happen? But yeah,
no.
They'll be like, oh, goal happened, so make FIFA the movie.
You know what? I'm gonna polish this one off by saying a big prediction. Within the next 8 months, there's going to be a COD film announcement.
I'm going to join you in making announcements. There will be an official Legend of Zelda announcement. I reckon Nintendo have been like, we'll have this. These are the IPs we want to put on the back burner. If Super Mario does well, they'll let Illumination, which are the people that did Minions, they'll give them free reign and be like, okay, cool, take this IP and make it into a film. I think that's what they'll do.
All right, we're putting the money down now. We'll check back next year.
Yeah. I don't know what we win, but we win something. Bragging rights.
Pride, yeah.
And my final one is a bit more of a sour one, in that Overwatch 2 has officially cancelled its dedicated PvE mode. This was announced by Jared, is it Noose? I don't know how to say his last name. Neuss.
Neus?
Neus, there you go. Well, if I've butchered his name, which I almost definitely have, I apologise. That man, the executive producer on Overwatch 2, he announced that the hero mode would not be coming to the game as was initially promised during a Twitch live stream. He said that, quotes, development on the PvE experience hasn't made the progress we hoped. That doesn't make any fucking sense. Hasn't really not made the hasn't. I thought I was going insane, but apparently that's the direct quote that he said.
He was struggling that day.
So apparently we can speak better than he can. It hasn't made the progress they were hoping it would have made by this point, essentially. He said it hasn't. They've reached a crossroads, and they've said, do we put out something that we think is going to just be bad and isn't going to be up to par, or do we cut our losses and say, no more? And they've chosen to do the latter. This mode was actually tried out, like it actually had a, I don't know if it was a full beta, but people played it back in 2019. So what, 4 years ago now?
Wow.
And yeah, they've just done away with it. I don't know what the reception for that was, whether they said yes, we like this or what, but no more. It shan't be a thing. However, story missions, in quotes, whatever they will exactly entail, will still be coming in season 6, which people anticipate will be around August time, based on how quickly the season turnaround has been so far. And this kind of is like a placation for, well, you can't have this, but we can give you this. So it's not dead completely, and it will feature in some forms in the coming seasons, apparently. But yeah, that's kind of been whacked off. And my final question, Matt, I'll ping it over to you.
Okay.
People are obviously naturally disappointed by this because they hyped this up as this was almost, from what I understand, between the two of us, you were more of a resident expert on Overwatch than myself.
I played it a fair bit, yeah.
And you've actually played it, yeah. This was the reason. This was kind of sold. This is why Overwatch 2 needs to exist, as opposed to doing a substantial update to the game. But I think this is also interesting in that saying people are like, well, does this, we've been shortchanged here in that you could have just updated Overwatch 1. But from what I understand, they reduced the team, right? So from 6 to 5. Is that correct?
They did, yeah.
Which I know they had a whole thing before, but well, it's a problem they caused themselves, right? Because it was Brigitte that broke the game.
Initially, she kind of did, but there was a bunch of problems with their meta that kind of went round in circles.
Yeah, they had balancing issues that were kind of caused by their own infrastructure, but that being its own thing. My thing is that does Overwatch need this, or is it just the fact that it was told it was going to be here, and then they've kind of done a bit of a rug pull and said actually no, and they probably knew this was going to be the thing roughly when they're releasing it, right?
I don't think. I mean, when I was playing Overwatch, I was never thinking, "Man, I'd love to play this co-op."
Yeah, that's my thing. Is like, is anybody, because I was watching a video on Counter Strike as an overall thing. You have to plant a flag or like cut it off, right, and be like, Counter Strike became CS:GO, and now like they've recently announced Counter Strike 2, right? Correct me if I'm wrong. So you have to have points, and I think they did a single player variant of Counter Strike. Again, correct me if I'm wrong. Zero condition. They did something, and people were like, "This is trash. We don't want this. We want to play PvP. Just give us this." And the quote that I heard go along with that was, "If you can't make it better, as in a sequel, if you can't make a product better, just don't fuck it up."
Yeah,
and
that's fair.
Is that what they're doing right now? Because from what I understand, Overwatch 2 is just kind of, it's continually doing the sideshow bob and it's just stepping on rake after rake. It can't not hurt itself. People want to like it, but they just seem to be doing all that they can to crap on its reputation. And
do you know what I think? I'm going to give you a deep conspiracy theory right now.
I can appreciate I threw out a lot of questions there, by the way, and I said a lot of things. So break your answer down as you will. But yeah, continue.
I'm going to come in. Right. So Overwatch 1 comes out. Everyone likes it. It's balanced for competitive rather than casual, as far as I understand. So it's like high-end play. They listen to the pro players and they make changes based on that. And there were some like little event type missions that happened where you would play against. I think in the Halloween one, you played against like zombie AI controlled roadhogs that would come out, and you played with 4 other people as well. So they had already experimented with that kind of formula in like a tiny little kind of microcosm. And then there was another one, I can't remember the name of it had a special name, but when you play as like Blackwatch people from when Overwatch was before Overwatch and all that kind of stuff in the lore, I mean, and it showed their origins and that, right? So you've got this like AI driven or AI PvE competitive thing, co-op going on. You've got games that are popping off that are like that 4-player Left 4 Dead style, right? And you want to make a sequel. They want to make a sequel to make money. That's what Overwatch 2 is. Overwatch 2 is not about balancing, and it's not about significantly changing the gameplay. If you wanted to update it to only be 5 players, I don't know. Don't know a huge amount about coding or like the back end of Overwatch, but I'm almost certain you could do it given enough time. Especially they were given the time and budget to make an entire other game. You could definitely do it, right? So they've played around with these PVE things. They want to make more money because Overwatch is like a global phenomenon at that point. It's like a up there esports thing, but they need to like milk it a bit more. So they promise the PVE. They shroud it in Overwatch 2. They make some changes so that they can disguise the fact that they needed the sequel. They then say, "Oh, our PvE isn't quite ready, but look, we'll give you the multiplayer anyway." And then all of their money making tactics come in. So the fact that loot boxes were dropped out, you've got the whole battle pass thing going on now, and you have to work your way through that. The predatory shop with the prices just way too high in Overwatch 2. They rebalanced it to make more money, used PvE as a shroud, and then now they've made their money from the initial release. They're just pulling PvE out and letting Overwatch 2 stand on its own two legs and go forward. And then they're going to reintroduce it in the same way they did in Overwatch 1. I think it's greed. I think it's nothing more than greed, and I think it was a big old ploy.
I mean, it's Activision Blizzard, right?
It might be a deep cut, it might maybe seem insane, but I honestly think it's just greed.
How deep does that iceberg go? But no, I think you'll probably get a fair few people agreeing with you. Do you know what? Audience engagement. If you agree or disagree with Matt, let us know. If you think it's a conspiracy that Overwatch 2 this was the plan all along, let us know. But I think you're making a lot of sense there, Matt. To me, anyway.
Don your tinfoil hat with me.
So that's all the news that I've got this week. And now we're going to finish on our episodic question, which is, Matt, tell us, what's the question?
So the question this time is fourth wall breaking / meta humor a good device? Which is an interesting one. My knee-jerk reaction when I saw that was no. I think maybe that's just because I've had so many instances where I've seen it and it just comes off all wrong.
It's not inherently bad, I don't think, but it's always almost used badly.
It's hard to put into your media. Right. Yeah, like to actually insert it into what you're doing and make it come off as funny.
It's the comedic equivalent of a souffle. It's very easy to fuck up.
Yeah.
And quite hard to get right, but if you do, it's probably quite good.
Yeah, totally. I hear that. And I can't think of like many good examples. The one I've written down is Scrubs, because I know Scrubs did it quite a bit, like talking to the audience, and even you could say like the inner monologue style. That in a way is a bit fourth wall breaky.
I think so, yeah, because it's almost like a soliloquy, right? That character is directly talking to the audience at that stage, and they did it with just more than a JD. That was like a thing in other episodes where you heard the internal monologues of like Elliot and Turk and stuff. So I used to watch a lot when I was younger. Yeah,
I thought Scrubs was great. Like the comedy was good, but that element of it kind of set it apart.
But then I know people that hate Scrubs because of that.
Yeah, I can see it.
Quite a divisive tool.
Yeah, I can't really think of. I mean, Deadpool does it all the time. And like the movie was funny, but I don't really know too much more about the character, and I'm not experienced enough of his other stuff to be like, yeah, it works with Deadpool. So I don't know if it's like character and setting relevant or like writing relevant, and it kind of worked well. Stanley Parable did it, and it worked, but I hated the fact that gave carte blanche for other like indie devs to think that it's clever to do that, and you've got like quite a few games that have come out that were trash, but like thought they were smart because they're talking to the player.
So I played a game called Procession, or the Procession to Calvary, not Cavalry, and I played it because it was like, I'm on this website called True Achievements, which is an achievement hunting website, and you put a game on there and you'll be like, this is how hard this game is to fully complete and unlock everything. And people were like, it's not a hard game, you can finish it pretty quickly. It was on Game Pass, so I was like, yeah, that'll kill a Friday night for me. I can do that, get my score up, have another game ticked off. And it had that in it. It had a very strange, I don't know what like oil painting art style, but like they'd animated it,
Okay.
and it was like really like irreverent and goofy, and but there was tons of that in it. And there was a point where you had to, I think, cross a bridge. You had to do something, and it was like the character was like, "What am I supposed to do here?" It said like, "Developer, help me," and then it pans up, and then like the developer is like a god with these puppet strings, and it's like, I don't know, and then he just makes up some plot stuff.
Yeah,
And it
that's not good
like,
for me.
yeah, that does not a good game make. Just the fact that you're aware of something being bad does not make it good. Like Bethesda saying, it just works. Whether they're saying that tongue in cheek or Todd is actually that unaware, I don't know which one bothers me more. That you fact you know that your games are buggy as hell and you love that because you're like, well, we don't have to fix them because you keep playing them. But yeah, being self-aware of something doesn't. It's like if you said, "Oh, I'm an absolute asshole," but I know it, so know me, know my ways.
It isn't. Yeah, maybe the example I'm thinking of, which isn't, it's kind of like tangential to the point of fourth wall breaking, but in some horror films where they reference horror films and they're like, "Oh, I'm not going outside. Have you ever seen a horror film?" And it's like, "Yeah, we get it. We're watching a horror film." It's like that's not funny or clever. The way that Scream did it, when it's an essential part of the plot, and the entire film is like a consistent meta commentary. That is clever because it's been thought about. It's not a throwaway comment. And if you want to do meta humor or fourth wall breaking humor, it has to be like deeply ingrained into the writing or the character for it to make sense and for it to pay off, I think.
Something like Deadpool that is ingrained into the character, and that's what he does. And I think they cast Ryan Reynolds as that really well because I think that's his sense of humor. So not only did the actor match up with the character, like it was a perfect marriage in that
Yeah.
in that sense. But because I feel like it works well for that, but there's been so many bad examples of it recently as well. Like I know you were saying about Redfall, how there's a lot of Zoomer humor in it, and I don't know if that's a huge disconnect between the people that are currently making games and what they think, quote unquote, young people think is funny. You said less. I remember you said less prevalent in Dead Island 2, but apparently the Saints Row like soft reboot has that as well.
Yeah.
Where watching a review on it, they said it's very strange that you're happy to like kill and disintegrate people and rip their limbs off, but then you also have some kind of weird moral social compass, and you're really big on recycling. Like it's a very strange thing an odd tightrope to walk. I think She-Hulk did it as well in a few instances, and that made people not like She-Hulk more.
Doesn't She-Hulk finish with She-Hulk going and finding the writer of She-Hulk and like making the last episode different or something? I couldn't get through the first episode, so I didn't watch the whole thing, but I swear it has like the laziest meta ending.
Potentially, I'm unaware, but that sounds like something it would do. But yeah, I just don't think it's ever, unless it's something like, or like a slapstick thing. So like Scary Movie, Naked Gun, Hot Shots. Those kind of films where they are a complete pullback and be like, we are just absolutely ripping to shreds everything that makes up this genre.
When it's parody, like I think that sits somewhere else. Like with this conversation, like parody movies, like or any kind of parody media. Although I'm not sure I've played a parody game. I don't know if you can actually do that with games. Maybe that's
maybe Stanley. I would say Stanley Parable or something like that is the closest equivalent.
Yeah, because you like. I think that's
because
a
you
question.
can't not play a game, right?
You still have to interact with it, right? It has to be a good. You can't parody a good game because you have to make a good game, right? Like, how do you parody? I suppose you can parody the tropes, but then you're just doing the meta humor, and I don't think it would come off.
Yeah, it's interesting that you don't associate it with good things, right? Because it's like, well, I'm already good, so I don't have to be meta. It seems like sometimes it can be viewed as low-hanging fruit for people to be like, I don't know how to. I'm almost aware this is bad. So rather than lean into it, I'm gonna be like, I'm just gonna make a throwaway. You got to be all or nothing. I think, in my humble opinion, either throw yourself into it or don't use it at all. But to use it as like almost get out of jail free card doesn't sit too well with me.
Yeah, I agree with that. You have to commit the whole experience even if you just have to like set it up properly. It doesn't have to necessarily be like a Scream level, like full on intense intellectual build up for this meta analysis or anything. It can be like small moments that are fourth wall breaking or meta, but they have to be built up properly. And like you said, you can't just chuck it in there and be like, no, okay, well, games, well, well, you're just playing a game, aren't you? Like that's not fun.
It shatters, I think, that suspension of disbelief as well. Like if you're playing, say you're 20 hours into a game, quite enjoying it, and then the character's like, for some reason, the sprint button is this, and it's like, whoa, hang on, you just completely pulled me out of this now, and you're expecting me to go straight back in. So to throw it in there as a random thing, that's a big curveball that could upset the flow. I think, anyway.
I think Inscription handled it quite well. Not necessarily humor, but the way that they set the whole game up. Like you start the game by watching found footage of someone talking about a game called Inscription that was never supposed to be made or something. It's been a while since I played it properly. So I'm a little bit foggy. But they reference the game within the game, and then you start playing the game Inscription in the game.
It's not too bad. I think that's the like that to me says I've thought about this and I've incorporated it properly, not just I want to make a cheap joke because I don't know what to say here.
Yeah.
So I guess to summarize, it's not inherently bad, but if you're going to do it, go all out. Don't use it as a way to fill up a line of dialogue for a character or to make a joke that probably isn't that good.
Yeah, if you can't think of a joke and your end point for that is, well, I'll just reference the developers, just don't make the joke.
So that's it for this episode, guys. Thank you so much for listening, as always.
Yeah, thank you for choosing to spend your time here with us. And if you like what you heard, subscribe, ping the bell, leave a comment, and we'll talk about it in the next video if you do. And yeah, keep your eyes peeled for any new releases.
Yeah, and feel free to have a look around the channel. We've got some other content. We've got some interviews that we've done with a few people in the gaming sphere. And the lovely Matthew has made some tasty shorts that you can check out. He's got some good stuff on there.
I am lovely and they are delicious.
Thank you again, and take care. And we'll see you on the next one.